Okay, Mr. Sands, you are all set.
Okay, let's call the Operations Committee of the Board of Education to order at 6:01 today, Monday, March 8th, 2021. In view of the fact that we have several guests with us tonight, I thought it might be a good idea. I would entertain a motion to move item 4 up to ahead of the committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
Could I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, so let's talk about the infill options for the stadium turf field. Who wants to go first?
Thanks, Ted. I'll just do a quick introduction unless Paul wants to. We do have a couple members from KBA here to go through the information. We have both Luke and Eric from KBA, but we also do have Rick Maynard, you all know from Park and Rec, Paul Schmidt from the Fields Committee, and Jake Jarvis is also along with us, to help answer any questions you might have. So I'm going to turn it over to Luke. He'll lead the meeting and then hopefully be able to answer any questions. We did try to send out information through Terry earlier or later last week, so hopefully everybody got that information. So Luke and Eric, it's turned over to you.
Luke, I think you're muted.
Sorry, if you was just looking to share the screen, if you wouldn't mind. There we go. Okay. So thank you. I want to just give a brief update of kind of where we're at today, review the background of the turf systems that were reviewed and the ultimate recommendations for the project for turf systems for going out to bid. So the project started, as Cliff had mentioned, last spring with the existing assessment of your facility. During the summer, we conducted conceptual designs, which moved into the fall for design development and cost estimating. And then we're here before you today to talk about the construction documents and looking to go out to bid. As part of that process included looking at different infill systems, as well as visiting a number of other facilities that the smaller group went and did along the way. As we did that, we also looked at the overall layout for the field, which I know I've shared this previously, just very briefly for anyone who hasn't seen. Looking at the turf overall layout and lining will be very similar to the upper field as far as inlaid lines, colors, etc. Reconstructing the D zones with the track events, as they are also at the end of their lifespan with the track, addressing and rebuilding the track, as well as some outside modifications to the site, which would include along your home side at the edge of the track there. We know that there's erosion and ongoing maintenance issues with erosion onto the track, so that will be addressed as part of this project. And then some ancillary paving, for walkways and such, track, fencing, and then also some improvements to the press box for sound system, as well as video tie-in for the project. Not really any of that has changed since the last time we presented the update. So really into synthetic turf systems, when we talk about a synthetic turf system, we look at 3 components within it. We have the carpet, which is the green part. We have the infill, and then below that is the base layer, which can consist of a shock pad, over stone, or just straight stone. So as a committee, we went through all the various options currently on the market for synthetic turf systems, which can be made of a monofilament fiber, a parallel slit film, most of the time called a slit film or a tape fiber, or a combination of the two. And then looking at adding in what's called a thatch, which is a little bit denser and lower fiber, which helps to keep the infill in. And what all of those systems are that incorporate that. We also looked at the available infill products that are out there in the market, from crumb rubber, coated crumb rubber, coated sand, EPDM, which is a elastic plastomer, very similar to rubber, but it's a plastic man-made, it's not recycled. EPDM, which is a virgin rubber. And then you have natural infills, which can be anything from a wood product to a cork or a walnut or any combination thereof, and the various differences between. We also looked at which systems require a shock pad, as well as the benefits of a shock pad, even if it's not required within a system for all of those. And as we went through, we also talked about the important part, which is safety of the field, not only for the athletes, as you can see here, which is player and performance, where we're looking at which systems affect player impact on the turf, or safety as far as Gmax or head impact or lower extremities, but also performance for the field for those players, ball roll, ball bounce, and how each of those systems affected that. Then we started to look into health concerns for synthetic turf and the various infills. We went through, and this is a lot of the information that was shared with you all in the emails, but I'm going to summarize because we do know it was a lot of information shared. So we went through a series of comparing the different infills that are on the market, from what data is out there, what testing is out there, how many are in the ground, through also maintenance requirements, such as some of the natural infills do require moisture content within, which would mean the field would either have to have an irrigation system, or you'd have to be set up with a portable irrigation system. You'd have to have the staff available to continuously check the moisture within that system. And you had to budget for ongoing maintenance and replenishment of some of those systems. So those were the things that were reviewed overall. We also looked at the various different infills and where they were installed throughout New England and the country, to get an idea of how each of those systems has expected, lived out their expectancy based on what manufacturers have told versus real world situations. We then also started to look at all of the data that was available for each of the infill systems, primarily the three that the committee first narrowed down to, which was coated crumb rubber, a coated sand, which is what you have at the upper field, and a natural product, which is a wood-based natural product. The reasoning for that one was that it does not have the requirement for the moisture content. So it was a little bit different than many of the other natural infills out there. We looked at not only the EPA recent study that was Part A was conducted, still waiting on Part 2, but also regional and national studies that were done. In your packet of information that was sent with everyone are some recent fields that have these infills installed in them and have been tested under two protocols. One is an ASTM testing protocol. The other is an EN 71-3. Both are testing mechanisms for looking for the ability for extracted materials out of a product. So what it means is the products are tested to see if there is any way for materials to be extracted or leached out of them and cause potential health concern to anyone who's in contact with them or digests them. Simple terms, these are the same tests that are used for child safety, for things like pacifiers, bottles, binkies, whatever you want to call them. This is the process they go through to make sure that the materials used are not leaching out any hazardous materials. And you can see here the ASTM tests for 8 different materials. The EN71-3 tests for 18 different materials. This is a list of recent fields over the last 3 to 4 years that were tested under both of these protocols that include the coated crumb rubber product. It's an acrylic food-based coating over crumb rubber. All of these recent and local fields were tested for both ASTM and EN and shown not to have any health concerns followed by that testing. And again, that's all in your packet. So based on all of the research and all of the data that I'm summarizing for you here tonight, the committee recommended looking at a system that includes a dual fiber with a thatch and bidding with 3 infills so that you can compare pricing at the time when they come in. And I'll talk a little bit about base bid versus alternate in a minute, but it is the coated crumb rubber, which is going to be a greenish in color. What it does is it's in a food-based acrylic coating that coats recycled rubber, and it allows for cooling in the summer, which is one of the drawbacks of crumb rubber that we know in the industry. It also removes a significant amount of potential of direct exposure to the material there. It's a similar coating that's on the upper field, but that field is coated sand, which is the second alternate, coated sand. And then the final third one was an alternate, it's called a product called Brockfill, and it's a wood-based, a pine-based infill material that we went and saw a field in Rhode Island. All 3 systems will be over a shock pad, so that again, it's similar in nature to your upper field for consistency for players and athletes and safety. Very quickly, we also did a similar process for the track surfacing, just in case anyone's interested. Went through the various systems and looked at structural spray as the base bid. This is very typical for all cross country at the high school level, and then a sandwich system for an alternate to get pricing. Sandwich system is more expensive up front. The budget may not support it, but there are benefits to it, such as reduced maintenance over the long term of the facility. So taking all of that and breaking down to where we are today is that the committee, as I mentioned, had recommended going to bid with pricing for 3 infills. Base bid, the recommendation would be the acrylic coated SBR combination with sand. So it's acrylic coated, it's green in color over the recycled rubber. Alternate number 1 would be the wood fiber infill. Manufacturer name is Brockfill. And then the second alternate also is the acrylic coated sand, which would be similar to the upper field. And then the track system would be bid as base bid structural spray, staying similar to what you have there. And then an alternate for pricing for the sandwich system that, if in the end you choose and works into the budget, does reduce overall maintenance of the 20-year lifespan for the field. Kind of next steps. I can take questions now. I saw a hand raised, or I can take them at the end. I'm not sure.
Well, hi, whichever you prefer.
I'm fine with either. I'll go for it right now.
Okay, I just a real quick question on the slide before, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Under alternative system, under the base bid alternative system 1, the second bullet on each says end sand fill. Is that a combined fill, or is there something I just don't understand?
So all infill systems have a performance infill and a stabilizing infill.
Okay,
in this
that's
case,
the stabilizing.
Yep. So the first 2, the natural wood and the coated rubber, use sand as the stabilizing. The coated sand is just one material in the whole infill.
Terrific.
Yep.
And is there a quick explanation between the difference in terms of a track surfacing system of the structural spray and sandwich course? Yeah.
So there's 2. One is sandwich system is more cost effective upfront for construction, but it's a permeable system, which means the water is able to flow through it to the asphalt and then flows horizontally. It wears very well, but it does require resurfacing, which is the colored coating on the top that you run on every 6 to 7 years. The sandwich system instead is an impervious system. It's a little bit thicker of a wearing course, more expensive up front, but would only require the recoating every 10 years. So you'd actually be just doing the resurfacing once in the 20-year lifespan, versus the structural spray, you'd be looking at 2 times in your lifespan. Sandwich system also is a little bit higher performing, but
That was
the
my
big
thought.
benefit is the maintenance.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that that's going to depend on how bids come in for us. There's really no
Right.
Yeah.
downside to the sandwich system. It will depend on whether bids come in favorably enough to allow us to move in that direction.
Terrific. Thank you.
Can I ask a really quick question about that? With the,
Sure.
with one of the systems being impervious, does it require additional drainage? Because you're not absorbing the rain and, any kind of moisture. So how does that get managed?
Yeah, no problem. Nope, it doesn't require different. The difference between the two is the impervious, the water runs on the top of the track system. The pervious system, the water will actually flow through the track system itself. It'll hit the asphalt and then run sideways through the system and then be collected in the same stormwater system that runs around the inside of the track. So it's really just a difference of whether it's on the top of the track or it's within the track system where the water moves.
Thank you.
Problem. I don't see any other hands. So moving forward, if approved and looking at these as the options, the project would move forward into bidding, which would then encompass advertising, the bidding, scope reviews, negotiations with the parent low bidder contract for contract signing, back to the various commissions and approvals throughout the town, and then the process of submittals and mobilization, so that the project would start construction in mid-June. Once the school athletics and graduation have completed, the project would then continue through the summer into early spring, whereas the track surfacing is really the last piece that would be installed, because once the new asphalt's put down, you have a 28-day curing period on that, which typically is the time period they use to install the new turf. They then put down your new track surfacing markings with the intent of no later than the end of September that the field and track be opened back up for school and community use. And then October would be project closeout. So that would be the training and the maintenance of both, getting the owner's manuals, all of those kind of things that have to happen after what we call substantial completion. The goal would be to try and get the facility open as soon as possible, but we just never know with weather over the summer. We could have a great summer into August and September, but both the turf and the track installation are heavily dependent on not being raining. So we really wanted to make sure that we blocked out the amount of time for contractors to be able to do so, but the goal is to have it delivered sooner than that if possible, and the weather works in the favor for that. And then the project would be completed prior to the end of this year for the new facility. So with that, I'll open up for further questions. Or Cliff, if I missed anything.
Hi, Mr. McCoy. This is Joe Galena. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, I can.
Well, on the other slide that Dr. Beltracy was speaking of, and I think Moira chimed in on, between the two systems, would extreme weather conditions affect or be better with one system versus the other, or is there a recommendation and what is considered extreme weather for these types of systems?
Sure. So any of them, extreme weather can be, I probably would have never said this until last year, but a tornado, we had one go through a field in West Haven, that was definitely an extreme condition. But for the most part, you're talking about either significant rains, or what we're seeing more prevalent in New England is heavy rains followed by a deep freeze that night that may lead into, freezing for a couple of days. The systems that we've proposed really are the best systems that we recommend for New England and the weather that you get. There's some other systems, some other products that are out there, but we just have found at the municipal level, which means that they're heavy use. They're used right up until or after Thanksgiving, and then they're used again right at the beginning part of March. And the weather conditions that these systems really have shown time and time again that they can handle that. The benefit with the track, as was mentioned, was a little higher performance and less in between maintenance, but not the ability to weather one of the other storms. Turf systems, again, very similar in nature. That's why all three are recommended before you with a pad, same carpet type. The infill is slightly different with each. The acrylic coated crumb rubber is going to have the least amount of maintenance and is going to be affected the least by weather conditions, whether it's cold or raining. The acrylic coated sand is what you have in the upper field. Again, performs very well in majority of them, but we have seen a little bit that particular product can hold some water within the infill and potentially freeze during extremely cold weather there. The last product, the Brockville, benefit to that is the summertime and completely reducing the heat effect on the turf field, with that system there, but does have slightly more maintenance over the life period because there will be a little bit of top dressing of that product required.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I appreciate that. So, I mean, between the two systems, the one that requires maintenance twice in its lifetime as opposed to the other system that may require it once, I mean, there is no difference, but when it comes to extreme weather, they'll both have to potentially be repaired if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, you really shouldn't have any weather that should affect the track systems, especially the timing of the use. And what it really comes down to, spend a little bit more money now, but potentially, you remove a little bit of maintenance over the next 20 years. So you may, do it that way. Versus, spend less now and just plan for having to do two coatings over it. The turf systems, that's where, it can be a little bit more dependent on the weather. And that's why, as you saw there, the base bid recommendation of the committee and from the athletic director was the coated crumb rubber due to its minimal changes in performance and characteristics throughout all weather events. Throughout the year that they'd be using it.
Great, thank you.
Paul,
Mr. McCoy, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dick.
What does this do to our fall athletic schedule?
So I will defer to Jake on that question, but I would assume that with the upper field, we will have the ability to schedule events to the upper field should this opening push into September or even October. Jake, will you be okay?
Yeah, we're going to try to flex some games, flip-flop some games. Field hockey, maybe home and away, soccer, some home and away, and football. Unfortunately, if we have to have a game on the upper turf, we'll have it on the upper turf, but we're hoping to have more games at the end of the season at home.
Okay, so we'll try to start the season heavy on away games and offer more home games deeper in the season when we'll have both fields. That's smart. Thank you, Jake.
Mr. McCoy,
Jake, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things is that the CIC doesn't release your schedule kind of until closer to, and then from there, it's more of a horse trading and that you can't really tell them you want to be all away. They don't necessarily do that. So, Jake, we've spoke about that kind of process and we'll help if also necessary with other facilities, but we've tried to keep him in the loop throughout. So he was aware of it moving into the fall.
Is there any particular advantage? Sorry, is there any particular advantage to having similar surface to what we have in the upper field, the coated sand? Do we, is there a usage where, is there a situation where we could use excess product to infill if need be? Can they be used, in tandem like that?
So there always is that benefit of having two, players go from one to the other. It's a similar surface between the two. You do have an attic stock that you could use between the two, but there are some difference a little bit in the feel and the overall playability of the product that was selected for recommendation here versus the upper as well on the game field. And we've heard some feedback that that particular product, the sand-based acrylic, the coated sand-based product, because it is sand-based, can be a little bit more abrasive than the other two infill products. So as a game field for things like football or soccer, where there's athletes sliding or on, it can be a little bit more abrasive for them there. So it was a little bit more heavier on the performance side for the selection of the infill at the lower field.
And theoretically, if we decided on one infill for the lower field, have we looked into it all, what it would take to retrofit the upper field if need be with that same infill, just to be on the same, again, to your point, the same infill?
Yep, sure. You can retrofit, any that. There's obviously a cost to it, especially being a newer field, extracting the infill out, which was the process done, when that field was remediated about a year ago. That infill was extracted out and it could be replaced. It is not insignificant in a cost, and you do have to look at too is it may reduce your warranty from the turf manufacturer because of that extra wear on the fibers during that process, but it can certainly be done. It could also be over the timing, the life of it could be top dressed with the infill you used below to give it a little bit more of a consistency similar as well there. So there's various options for sure. But right now it's not proposed to do that as part of this project.
Understood. Thanks.
Mr. Jarvis, would you just mind saying, I'm putting you on the spot, just saying a few words about the recommendation for the acrylic coated, and speaking to Mr. Delventura's point that my guess is you've thought through all of these different things, and that your recommendation, which is different than the infill in the other field, is one you make with thinking through all those different options and considerations.
Yes, we have when talking to our athletes, they like the original field, which is right now chrome rubber. So they like the feel of that. I think the newer field, having the problems with it splitting and the acrylic sand, the abrasiveness, they kind of prefer to play down there. But they love having both turf fields and the option to play when it's raining and being able to flex different things out. So when we were looking at this and looking at other schools that have the acrylic rubber, that was kind of the best bet to go, to give them that same feeling and to have the least amount of maintenance, but would be close. It's fine to have two different types of infield, because the stadium field is more of with the surrounding people coming in, hosting big events, whereas the upper turf field, you don't really have stands in it right now. So you have like just a 4-foot gate around it, so people kind of stand there and watch the game. So we kind of have the big events in the lower turf field.
And Jake and Rick and Paul, am I correct in remembering that when we did the upper field, the coated rubber was relatively new? We did not have a lot of experience with it, and that now it's a more proven product and we're in a different place as we consider it this time around. Am I recalling that correctly?
Well, this is Paul Schmidt from the Standing Fields Committee. Just to kind of clarify that for you, Paul. At the time, I think there was quite a bit of testing being done on the uncoated acrylic rubber, or the uncoated SBR rubber. And at the time, the general feeling was that since there was no real firm evidence or reasoning to stay with the crumb rubber, the option of going to the sand infill seemed to be a little bit of a safer route, if you will, and had less potential if there was test results that proved to be critical to the use of the rubber on a field from any of the different testing that was being done by the different agencies. So it was considered, but I think at the time, the standing building committee, the high school building committee, everybody felt that the way to go was to go with the acrylic coated sand, which was truly an inert product.
Right, but in the interim, we've had a lot more experience with the coated rubber, including all the schools that Luke just showed, as well as the testing regimens that Luke just shared. And schools are having positive experiences, communities are having good experiences and not reporting concerns with the acrylic coated rubber product, which seems to be, to Jake's point, a little bit of the best of both worlds. It takes the black coloring away, it encapsulates the concerns with the rubber itself, and the athletes prefer playing on it.
Exactly right, and that was really paramount in our recommendation to go with the acrylic coated crumb rubber. And there's, just to reinforce what Jake said, there are some sports which in many respects do like playing on the total sand infill as opposed to the crumb rubber. So having the two different options is not necessarily a bad thing.
I can just add that one of our neighbors, Clinton, Indian River field is acrylic coated crumb rubber, and that field I believe is 13 years old, so it definitely has durability. You know, our field we're in our 14th year, I think now. 2007, yeah, our field was 2007, but the Indian River complex is right behind us, and it's still in fairly decent shape, and it has the acrylic coated crumb rubber, so it definitely has some long lasting benefits.
I know the Milford school systems, I think they're putting in a couple fields right now. They'll have a total of 9 turf fields or 9 fields that have acrylic coated rubber in it.
Hand.
Hi, yes, I just a comment and a question, a comment. I'm not aware, the sand up on the upper turf did not cause that carpet to split, right? I'm not remembering that correctly, right?
The final assessment was that it had more to do with the drainage, but I think to Luke's point, it does seem that if it didn't cause it, but it does seem to be more likely to run into problems when you've got a lot of rain followed by a severe freeze. I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, in my mind, I can picture rubber compressing more than the sand compresses. We did adjust the drainage with that field when we corrected the problem. We felt that there was a drainage concern. I don't think it causes it, Amy, but I think there's been more concerns with the sand in that situation than there have been with rubber or coated rubber fields.
Okay, and then my other is more of a comment than a question. I mean, I've heard some, feedback from, Mr. Jarvis, other people, players, that the sand isn't, has a different feel to it, maybe not always the most desirable playing surface. But for those of us who were on the board, when we were doing the new field, we did have significant, discussion with parents. I remember being in the Commons with, a lot of people from town who had very strong feelings about the field. And actually there was a large group of people that felt like the upper field should just be grass versus going with a turf field. And I think we made the right decision going with a turf field, but even though there's no, I'm happy that there's no negative data that's come up in the last few years. It seems, I don't know, I'm a little uncomfortable, not necessarily to pick the sand, but I'm a little uncomfortable to, get excited about a product that we can, considered even though it was new and then didn't use. And then I also, like the idea that the Brockville has a potential of not being as hot. I know that the coated is not as hot as the uncoated, but that the Brockville would be even less hot in those really, that's going to just it gets beaten on by the sun all day and evening or afternoon, I should say. So
if I can, Amy, a couple of comments that we received from New England field users who have the Brockville. There's 2 fields in Massachusetts, one in Rhode Island, and talking with the athletic directors of both of those locations. One of their comments was that there is a tendency, number one, in cold weather for the Brockville to be slippery and does freeze, so that you get some of the same reaction out of that we had with the sand infill, number one. And number two, there were some comments with respect to the player usage on those that the Brock fill was a little more abrasive than the acrylic coated sand, even though no serious issues. They all like it, and those were the comments that we received back from the actual users.
So what kind of turned me off about the Brockville was, I think there was 100 fields in the country using the Brockville, and most of them were in Texas, and Alabama, and Florida, where the weather's warm all the time. So just those 3 New England ones were a little bit disturbing.
So you do get the warming tendency from the use of the acrylic coated crumb rubber that you don't necessarily get as much from the Brockville just by the nature of its color. Okay.
All right. Do we have any other questions from the committee or other board members with respect to this? I think one of the things that we'll have to see is these do not price out equally. And we're going to have to see how the bids come in as to what the difference in price here is.
If there aren't any other questions, if you think of something, in the next couple weeks, feel free to email me. I can forward the questions to Luke and to Eric and get a response for you. So we make sure that any questions that do arise, that we do have answers for. Again, we're not looking for any type of motion or movement tonight. It was strictly an informative meeting to bring everybody up to speed, answer questions. We hope to have a special meeting tomorrow night to approve the bid package so that the turf field and track goes out to bid later this week. Hopefully it'll be in the paper by Thursday or Friday. So that's our goal.
And this way the board is aware of where the town and Standing Fields and the school athletic department sort of stand at this moment in time. Mr. Sands is right. Price is going to be an important variable to add to this conversation. We've got time to continue talking between now and when the bids come back before we need to make a final decision collaboratively over which fill to go with once the bids are returned to us.
Moira, did you have a question? I saw your hand raised before.
Yeah, I just, I'm remembering back to the other field, and this may have already been answered in some other technical information with the committee, but we had some concerns for the actual safety of the contact, with the skin. We're talking about abrasions and things like that. So the coated crumb rubber, have studies been done to prove that? I know it's been in existence for a while, but do we have, I know that was a concern back in with the other turf field, that parents were concerned about that. There had been, maybe it's not, maybe more anecdotal studies or cases where there was some concerns for the carcinogenic properties of the crumb rubber.
Yes, there have been, and that was where Paul had mentioned that at the time of that field, a lot of that testing was still in the process. So a lot of that has been released. Between California did a very extensive on their own through the state. There was also very extensive, not only round of testing, but then a plot where they installed it and then continuously monitored a field in New Zealand for exactly that, for any airborne coming out. What they did was they actually looked at using OSHA requirements, which basically OSHA sets a threshold for products and inhalation that someone should be able to breathe it in for 40 hours a week. For 50 weeks a year over 10 years without any adverse effect. And they have thresholds for materials that can be in the air. straight crumb rubber, as well as the coated crumb rubber, all fell well below those thresholds for that. So we felt confident based on that testing that it really showed between that and then the ASTM and the EM testing that I showed you there, which was for ingestion, really reduced the health concerns for it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And again, with that answer, I want to reiterate, we are not even bidding regular raw rubber, right? The only rubber product that's even being considered here is the encapsulated rubber. We're not looking at a raw rubber product at all.
No, I understand. Thank you.
I do appreciate the time that you're spending with us tonight, because I will echo Amy Sullivan's sentiments that as another person who was part of the very significant public comments that we received during the deliberations for the other turf field, some significant concerns about the crumb rubber. So I appreciate the time that you've taken and the information you've provided, and the opportunity to continue to ask questions to Mr. Gurnham if we have them, because I do want to do a little more looking just to remember exactly what came at us in terms of public concern the last time. But I do really appreciate this. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I want to thank our experts here for bringing us up to speed. And we, as I said, will reconvene once we get some idea of what pricing looks like, and then we'll have to make a more firm decision. All right, let's move to the minutes of February 8th. Does anybody have any?
Mr. Sands, I'm wondering if at this point we can thank very much, but also allow an exit to our guests if they choose not to sit through the remainder
Thanks very
of our
much for letting us
meeting.
in. We're gonna
as much as we enjoy your company.
Thank you. I just was looking for the opportunity to say thank you. And again, any questions, please send along to Cliff, and we'll do our best to get back anything that we can find to help answer them.
Yeah, don't hesitate.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the minutes of February 8th. Does anybody have any corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any comment with respect to the Standing Building Committee minutes? Hearing none. All right, Joe, why don't you tell us what you've learned about the financials?
Okay, Mr. Sands, thank you very much. So I met with Linda, and I have the report here for the February 2020 financial reports. And nothing major has changed. There were a few things that we could talk about in a moment, but the expenditures for the month of February were at $4,759,072.43. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of February were at 63.29% of the budget, as compared to 61.5% in the prior year. Revenue for February of 2020 was about $4,973, which included the $3,984 from Medicaid and around $989 from the pre-K tuition. Purchase services, the percent of the budget is lower than the prior year. There was a credit in the electricity line that reflected a payment from Z-Rec credit from CLMP of around $26,589. The credit in the postage line, it was a refund of an overpayment for postage meter leases. Going down the report, another thing I want to make or bring to everyone's attention was the COVID, the balance of the coronavirus relief fund grant of $282,376 has been received, and funds from the ESSER grant in the amount of $24,513 has also been received. And the warrants we're submitting is the total of all payments for the month listed alphabetically of total payments of $2,146,560.05. Going through the report on a few of the pages, one thing that I noticed that I did bring to Linda's attention that we talked about was on. Let me get it where it was here. I had it here. There was some repairs that needed to be done that were in excess of normalcy, I guess you want to say. There was a boiler pump repair and replacement at the athletic center, which was higher than anticipated for the month, but that needed to get done because of boiler of a replacement of a part and a major repair for that center. And then there was an office that had heating issues, which was a little higher than normal maintenance for the month as well. And at this time, any questions I can go over or discuss with anyone regarding the report?
I know it's been brought up in the past, but knowing that we've received the balance of the coronavirus relief fund grant, and it looks like we have an excess of about $1 million left in the COVID expenses, is there any relief in sight coming up for that?
So we do have the ESSER 2 grant. The application just came out. That's just over $500,000. There are still some funds in the ESSER 1 grant that we have not received yet. So we do have those. And then there does look like there will be some other funding coming to us as well. I don't know if Paul wanted to add any more to that.
Yeah, now that we're through this budget build and approval for next year, we are going to begin diving into the COVID, both expenditure and an offsetting grant report, so that we can bring that first to you and then pretty immediately directly onto the Board of Finance. We know that they are still anticipating our request for, an additional expenditures this year. So, to Linda's point, if we still have about $1 million that are uncovered, but we know we've got approximately 500,000 in ESSER 2, it looks like we may be asking the Board of Finance for a special appropriate or an additional appropriation in the ballpark of 500,000. We will see what the time frame on any future round of aid looks like and whether or not those dollars will be released in time to offset expenses associated with this year. There is a bit of concern we have around, whether or not those funds will be able to, the new funds, whether they'll be able to use so much to offset this year's expenses, or whether those are intended for expenses moving forward as we begin to come out of and recover from COVID. So we hope to have a better report for all of you, if not at your next meeting, certainly by the one following that. Linda, anything to add to that, or is that about the shape of it for now?
That's about it for now.
Linda, I noticed that in the report that you gave us, where under the employee benefits, that we've expended more for the medical as a percent of the budget than we did for last year. I was a little puzzled by that because I thought we were doing well on the medical front.
We are doing well on medical spend. That has to do with the timing of some of the reimbursements that we get from employee co-pays and retiree payments. So it's just more of a timing issue. I don't expect any kind of an issue with that account at all.
Okay. I assume that the same thing is true for the for the tuition account, where it's 77% versus 67 last year.
So the
you think
tuition
that's
expense,
timing?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ted.
No, you're saying that you think that that's timing also?
Yes, so we did receive our excess cost grant at the end of February. It is not reflected in the report because I could not confirm that we had actually received the funds in time to make it into this report. So the first allocation of the excess cost grant was received at the end of February. It'll show up on your March report. The first payment was actually paid at 83%. I do not expect the second final payment to be paid at 83%.
We
But
could
last-
always hope.
We could hope. We will keep our fingers
We could
crossed.
hope.
But last year, if we recorded that payment in this month, that would explain the significant difference.
Yes. So we did receive the payment, and I can give you the amount. So we received 985,000. Now, a portion of that does go to transportation, does not all go to tuition, but with those payments in there, the account would have been more in line.
Okay, that's very good input. All right, are there any questions from other people on the committee or on the board with respect to either the financial report or to the warrants?
Mr. Sands, I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Both related to, somewhat related to athletics. One, the coaching, and the other, athletic music and other transportation. I'm assuming that the smaller percent of expended and encumbered is about actual use, right? So transportation for those kinds of activities, unfortunately, is down because we haven't been able to take kids to a number of the things we usually do. Is the coaching likewise down because of fewer athletic sports teams being able to kind of have full seasons, et cetera? Do we know?
I am not sure exactly what the difference is. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can take a look at that and get back to you. It may likely be that not all sports had full seasons,
right?
But we can look at it more closely and get back to you.
And really, I'm sure you have been looking at this far more than I have. But I start looking at these things as we head towards the end of the year, as we think about kind of COVID expenditures, what we might have to go to the Board of Finance for, and where we might have some ability to transfer money. So obviously, I'm sure you've thought about it even more carefully than I, but that's the way I started looking at this report over the weekend. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
Just a quick question. And again, we may not have this answer yet, but with the stimulus bill just being passed, has anyone communicated from the state level or what that's going to mean? Because I know they said that there would be funding, for schools for COVID related, recovery. So I'm just curious, is it anything we can anticipate?
There's lots of speculation taking place and then lots of people warning you not to speculate. So Rosa DeLauro has asked, please not to start showing numbers around. And then, and then I've got colleagues who have figured out formulas and they say, if you take what you got for ESSER 2 and run it through this formula, it's going to tell you exactly what you're going to get for the new. It will probably be significantly more than the $500,000. But whether it will be twice or three times that, it too early to speculate right now.
Okay.
Especially since in Hartford, they're looking at the governor's budget and they're looking at what they're going to do, and we're not sure how much of it will flow through Hartford and to the districts, or if there will be any latitude for Hartford to try to take some off the top to use structurally at a state level. So again, it'll be significantly more, but I don't want to suggest how much more it may be until we get closer.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Paul.
Okay. Well, so let's talk about food service. Erica?
Good evening, everyone. So you did receive a copy of the financials in the packet for today, and it does say that we are negative $29,099.56, which is not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible. I do have a little bit of good news that actually will be going down. So about 5,000, maybe 5,500. So we would be looking at only being negative 23,000 and like change, we'll just say. With February, we did have our February break. So that was a 5-day meal kit. We also introduced a 7-day meal kit for any students in cohort C and who were quarantined. And then we also had our normal 3-day kit and single-day service that we have in school. So when the claim was being, I was putting the numbers together, I apologize. Some of them did get mixed up, but they're all corrected now, and we have $5,000 more. I love an error in our favor.
Yeah, I do too.
Right? It's not bad.
Erica, there's Erica, there's also the $6,500 for the from the coronavirus grant that will be coming your way for the additional hours from the beginning of the school year. So you've got that money coming towards you too.
I love bringing in money. So great. So with that, the 5-day meal kit, we were able to serve 1,904 breakfasts and 1,904 lunches. The 5-day kit is helpful. It's not as popular as a 12-day kit or as I'm anticipating the April break meal kit will be. But with Adams and the high school no longer, with cohorts A and B being combined starting the 15th, I'm very excited because I've restructured the menu and we're going to try to bring back some of the students' favorites, pancakes, firecracker chicken. Not that you guys ever probably hear about those, but they're very popular for school lunch, probably my number 1 and 2 sellers. So I'm looking forward for those options to be able to boost the meal counts then. We're also going to be able to introduce where parents don't have to come out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So they'll only have to come out and pick up meals on Wednesday, and they'll pick up either their 3-day kit or their 7-day kit. So I'm hoping that not having to be out as often or frequently will also help to boost those counts on Wednesday. I know my staff is looking forward to not being outside, even though it's going to be nice and warm in the coming months every day, as they were outside in the snow recently. It happens. We are also going over this evening is healthy food certification is number 6 on the agenda. So I'm just going to go over that briefly. So healthy food certification is something we participate in every year. It's the 10 cents that we receive for every meal that's served. We have not received healthy food certification money this year. The state is looking to see what numbers they're going to be able to use for our healthy food certification because we've been serving under a seamless summer option and not the National School Lunch Program. So the healthy food certification money is tied to the National School Lunch Program, and the state is looking on how that is going to be issued to us towards the end of this year. So there is hope that we will be able to get those funds and that they'll be able to use the meal counts from 2018 and 2019 rather than the years where we were serving COVID pandemic meals. And so the vote number 1 is to participate in healthy food certification, and number 2 is to allow exemptions for food and beverages. So that's the concession stands at the football games and all of those exemptions that we participate in every year.
And if I may, to avoid some confusion that we had last year, in your regular board packet, exhibit number 9.1, page 3 of 8 has specific food exemption language that must appear in the motion tonight. So when we make the motion, even if we can make the motion to include the language on page 3.8 of exhibit 9.1, then we will make sure that it gets in its entirety into our minutes tonight, and we'll have it accurate. So the first motion is just to participate. It's the motion to include the exemptions where we need the specific language. And
Yeah.
so just wanted to point that out.
Excellent. That's why I
Thank
unmuted. I was remembering that trouble last year.
We had
Perfect.
to go back. We had to go back and revote
Right,
last year.
right. We had
because-
to. Right. Excellent.
Yep.
I was gonna say, I think it was the description, everything went in the packet. I can forward the information over as well if you need it. And that's all I have.
Erica, with respect to the exemptions, are they the same as we had last year?
Yeah. So they allow all of the same. They just changed the wording that we have to say, but all of the same standards and what's allowed are all the same.
Excellent. Okay.
Just the way we report it.
Yeah, we have participated and we have held those exemptions for as long as any of us can remember. It's an annual update that we need to accomplish or complete, rather.
Very good. Other questions for Erica? Hearing none. Let's go to the tuition report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank
Jason
you, Erica.
Scanziano asked me to make his apologies to all of you tonight. And he told me it was okay to share with you that he had his appendix removed in an emergency procedure Thursday evening. So he's home and resting and well, but is unable to join us tonight and asked me to make his apologies. But Linda is completely prepared to share the tuition report with all of you.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I was emailing with Jason today on some things, so he is home working a little, even though he is recuperating. Before I start on the tuition report, I just want to say at the next meeting, I will not be in attendance, and I'd like to introduce Ashley Bannon. She's on the meeting tonight. Ashley will be covering for me. She's the accounting coordinator in my office. So Ashley will be there to help answer questions or bring questions back for the April meeting. All right, so tuition report. We already discussed the excess cost grant. On this report, I adjusted the estimate only up to 71%. I am still really concerned that the state's not going to keep it at 84%. The state did say that it's going to go down. They just won't, they have no idea how much. So I adjusted it a little, but I'm still not going up that high. So right now we're at $199,169 under budget. Slight little changes here and there to a couple of the costs, and the change to the excess cost grant brings it up just a little bit. So right now tuition is still holding in pretty good shape. So that's it for tuition, unless you have any questions.
I appreciate the conservative approach until we know more. I think that's a wise move.
Yeah. I know last year it came in, the first one at 74, the final one came in at 71, but 84 is just way too high right now for me to feel comfortable with doing anything crazy.
Honestly, Linda, I don't think I've heard that percentage in my 9 years on the board.
No, we've never
Right.
seen it break 80.
That's right.
It's ridiculously
Yeah,
high.
well,
I would point out that legally it's supposed to be 100.
Well, there is that important fact as well. So but I don't think I have heard that number in 9 years. So
according to the state, back in 2014, 2015, it was at 80.2%.
okay, so
I don't
there goes
remember
my
that.
memory,
I do not recall that either, Katie.
But the point
Yeah.
I think still stands. You are being wisely conservative at this point, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions with respect to the tuition report? All right, let's talk about the medical benefits account.
Okay, so I sent you out January's report. Claims.
This has got to be a misprint.
No, so what we think is happening is that in January, Anthem changed their system. And in changing their system, we don't think that they processed claims the way in a timely manner like they should have. So we that the February one is going to be a little bit higher.
That sounds right. Anecdotally, we know that we had a number of employees who had bills that didn't get covered. The bills were sent to the participants. We had to reprocess, we had to resubmit. That happened. And we know of several anecdotes where that occurred, one of which was in my family. So that doesn't surprise me at all if we're going to see a bump next month.
And Linda, will it be a larger number for the next month, or will it backdate and rise the previous month? Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it will show as February being high.
Okay, process that way. Okay, thank you.
Because that's the way the claims have come through. They were billed, it'll report what was billed in January. And then as they fix everything, it'll be reported in February.
Okay, thank you.
So right now, the projection is that we're going to have a fund balance at the end of the year of $7.5 million. We have claims that are covered under the stop loss of $969,000. It did take a big jump in January. So we are at percentage of 48.5% of the claims to the stop loss premium, which looking back at last year, it's a little bit off, but we did end last year having claims under what the premium was. So we never know what those claims are going to be. So we just will.
Well, I mean, we still got, several months to go in the fiscal year. Right. So, we don't charge against the stop loss in the first month anyway, because almost nothing gets to that level. But yeah. Well, look, I mean, the dragon has to eat once in a while too, and these guys haven't made any money on the stop loss for quite a while. It wouldn't hurt in terms of next year's premium if they actually made some money for once.
Yeah, our lifetime experience has been favorable to us with that. Mm-hmm. So exactly right.
Yes.
And this has been, let's just name it, such an unusual year,
right?
In terms of
absolutely
medical. Yeah.
Few appendices removed, and we'll jump right back up.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about this is that it's concentrated in very few people. And if we just have one bad case, somebody who has a real bad medical experience, I mean, that could put a couple $100,000 into the stop loss real fast.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions with respect to the medical? All right. Cliff, you're up.
Great. Well, thank you all for taking the time to go over the turf field earlier. I appreciate that. In regards to the rest of the projects, the Melissa Jones HVAC project, we are down to just the startup of the heat recovery system and the completion of the graphics. So that system is 99.9% complete. So next month, hopefully that we will close that project out completely. The Melissa Jones window and doors project, we did get the bids back. The lowest bidder is well within our budget. We did budget for potentially having to do a large abatement for PCBs. That's not the case. So that came back at $644,800 for a company that's out of Norwich, Accurate Door and Window. So the Standing Building Committee has recommended moving forward with them to the Board of Selectmen, and hopefully at Monday's meeting that will be approved and we can start moving forward with that project. The Melissa Jones elevator replacement project is presently out to bid. The bids are due back on the 8th of April. And we are having a bid walkthrough this Thursday. So we've already had about 8 different companies contact us with non-disclosures and to pick up the plans and specifications. So we are getting good turnout for that project. So we'll hopefully get some good prices on that. Moving on to the Melissa Jones and Guilford Lakes door and lock project. We received both sets of doors for both schools, and Peter Diaz has already started the installation up at Melissa Jones. So he'll be doing those mostly on Wednesdays when the students aren't in the school. Allows them to really move through the school without interfering with any staff or students. So we'll plug away at those over the next month or so, and we'll pull in additional help from other maintenance guys as needed to kind of push that along. So moving on to the Cox and Guilford Lakes HVAC projects, we expect those to hopefully go out to bid at the end of the month. We'll be having a special meeting in the next couple of weeks with the Standing Building Committee to get their approval on these specifications and bid documents. So we're really pushing them to get that to us to get out to bid so that we can get those approved upon the hopefully successful referendum to fund at least the Guilford Lakes projects. So we're moving along with those projects. Lastly, we do have the Baldwin HVAC project. All the equipment for that project has been installed. We are now doing, excluding the ERV, which is a air handler that goes up on the roof. That will be installed once the warm weather either dries out the grounds, or we have another deep freeze where we can drive the crane in and actually load that onto the roof. So A or B has to happen before we can complete that piece of equipment, but everything within the school has been installed. They're doing all the testing on it now with the controls, and they hope to, by the end of the week, be able to release most of that equipment to function, quote unquote, by itself through the control system. So really, we're getting to the end of that project. And like I said, the only real piece that will stop us from closing that out will be the ERV and the installation of that piece of equipment. So that's it outside of the energy performance contract. The only piece we have left there is the solar at Jones, and they're waiting for some warm weather and some clear skies to get up on the roofs and do some work up there. So I do believe we have a couple days coming in, so they may try to get up there and get some work done. So it just depends on how the weather turns out. That's it.
Cliff, let me ask you a question. As I think about this, you're going to have an awful lot of projects going on this summer, aren't you?
Yes, we will have a large number of very large projects all underway at the same time. It's going to be similar to when we did the security projects and opened up 4 or 5 of the schools all at once. So, you know, keeps me thin running from one place to another, trying to stay on top of everything. But, you know, it is a large number of projects, yes.
We have already started meetings and are having our second meeting in a matter of days to talk about where summer programmings will be housed. So we'll be meeting with Jason Scanziano and Anine Crystal, and then also Rick Maynard for Parks and Rec, as well as representatives from Guilford Before and After School Care to figure out where we will have the ability to house all of those programs, with projects happening at significant projects happening at 3 of the 7 buildings.
Okay. Any other questions of Cliff?
I do have a quick question,
Yes.
although Mr. Gurnham, please, you may not be prepared for this question. As I was looking over the minutes from our last meeting, there had been a question about the electricity bill at Cox. And I think you had noted that you were gonna look into that. I give you no heads up about this question. So if you're not prepared to answer it, that's fine. But just wondering if you had any additional information about what was kind of noted as an unusually, looks like unusually high, either electricity use or at least a bill.
We do have some feedback. So we did get the engineers out to take a look at the school. along with JCI to go through the controls thoroughly. What we were finding was, and this might not be the only factor, but at least it's something that we found so far, is the heating and cooling system, we're still trying to compete against each other, not in the classroom level like we had back when the school first opened, but on the kind of, we'll say the backside. So the boiler room and the cooling tower. So the programming really didn't allow, or the separation of the two. It was trying to do both kind of at the same time. So now we have pumps running and fans running that shouldn't be. So that would drive up both the gas and the electric. And it took some time to really figure out what was going on there. They've successfully been able to reprogram both of those systems so that they work together. So that if one's operating, the other one can't operate, which will also help the school with fluctuations. So we've been monitoring the system since they've done the new programming and everything else. And it's really balanced out the loop temperature throughout the school has become really like consistent. We shoot for about an 75 to 80 degree water temperature that circulates around the school, and that heats and cools the school. And if we can maintain that temperature, really with just circulating the water, taking a little heat from one room and putting it into another, and vice versa, you actually drive down your costs, both electrical and gas, because you balance the school within itself, so it really looks like things have leveled out there, but I'm not going to say that was the only cause. So we are still investigating it further, and we're monitoring it now. So hopefully we'll see a large drop. And if that doesn't happen, then there's something else behind the scenes that's also driving it up.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Very good question. Okay, anything else at Cliff?
Cliff, we had talked last month about the measuring and verification at Cox. Did anything come of that?
That was part of the question. I think that goes back to what Katie had just asked.
Sorry.
Came out to look at that school because of those fluctuations and everything else. If that's your question, I'm not certain.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if there was actually some kind of like a reason why. Yeah, I understood your answer as to the reason for the spike. I just didn't know if it was anything more than that. If it, well answered, thank you.
Right. So it was our M&V crew that came out and figured out those controls and stuff.
Okay.
From Johnson Controls. Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned at 7:18.
Have we gotten a Zoom invitation yet?
It just
Yeah,
came.
the link just came through via email.
So